What's up, smart students? Welcome to my channel. I have a question for you. Raise your hand if you have been one of the students that's been asking me for months and months to cover paraphrasing. Well, good news, you're in luck because this is the start of this mini-series where I'm going to talk about just that. Today we're going to start with plagiarism and the different types of it. We're going to talk about not just one, not just two, but 6 different types of plagiarism so you can understand exactly what it means, what they are, and then we're going to get to paraphrasing in a couple videos. But let's go ahead and start. So here's the thing about plagiarism is it doesn't matter if it's intentional or unintentional, you're still looking at the same consequences. So some of those might be, maybe you miss a few points on your assignment, or if there's too much plagiarized material, you might fail the assignment altogether. And if you're trying to submit a paper for publication with plagiarized material, I promise you're going to get denied. So this is why it's really important to understand plagiarism and everything you can do to avoid it. And I do want to start by saying this, is that your teachers, when they count you off for points or have you fail an assignment, they're not trying to be difficult. Here's the thing, is they generally run your papers through a plagiarism checker themselves, and if the score is too high, they have to count you off. There's really nothing they can do about it. It's not that they want to, it's that they have to. And so, by the way, when it comes to a plagiarism score, a rule of thumb is that you want to keep yours in the single digits. So in other words, a score, lower than 10, because when you get into 10 and above, that is when your professor is going to start counting you off. Depending on how high you go, the harsher it'll be. And so as a rule of thumb, 5% and under, fabulous. If you're somewhere between 5 and 10, you're not in the danger zone yet. Again, 10 or higher. And so I'm gonna link a few plagiarism checkers down below because, hey, if they're gonna run your paper through a plagiarism checker, you might as well do it first. Cover your bases, check your own writing before your professor does. But now, let's get into those 6 different types, starting with number 1. Direct plagiarism, also known as clone plagiarism. So it's exactly what it sounds like. This is when you're cloning someone else's work and trying to pass it off as your own. So in other words, you find a source you like what they have to say, and so you literally highlight, copy, and paste their writing verbatim and put it in your own. Keep in mind, you may only use a phrase, a sentence, maybe a few sentences, but regardless, even if you credit the author with an in-text citation, it doesn't matter because you are copying and pasting their work without putting any of your own work, thoughts, effort into creating your own idea. So that's number 1. What about number 2? Find and replace. So this is similar to number 1, but you put a little effort into it. You went a step further. So you clone their writing, but now you change a few of the words. So you like this sentence, you grab that sentence, you put it in your own paper, and then you go to the thesaurus and you change a few words in that sentence and then try and pass it off as your own. Again, this is still plagiarism because now all you did was deliberately change a few words, and that's not the correct way to paraphrase. But moving on to plagiarism number 3, which is called patchwork plagiarism, or medley, or mismatch, whatever you want to call it. This is one of my favorites because it's one that I think students fall into when they are feeling desperate. So you're trying to meet a deadline, you have a timeline and it's coming up fast, and so you need to get a paper written. What happens is that instead of investing the time to understand the topic or paraphrase correctly, you find a bunch of sources that would fit, and then you pull material from a few, or you pull little bits from all of them. And you're thinking it's going to look like effective research because researching is all about synthesizing. You know, you're reading different sources, you're pulling ideas from all these sources to make a brand new whole piece of information, right? And so if you pull a sentence here, pull a sentence there, that should look like synthesizing and effective research. Wrong. You still can't pull a sentence or an idea without paraphrasing it, without saying it in new words like correct paraphrasing is. And so this plagiarism is very common when a student is just trying to get that paper finished. But beyond that one, the next type of plagiarism, which is by far the most common, it's called accidental plagiarism. And so what happens here is you do paraphrase correctly, but you don't give credit. So you forget to create a reference list entry in an in-text citation. This is the most common when a student is just typing away, they're working, maybe you're not keeping track of your sources, but regardless, something happens to where you use another source's idea, you paraphrase it in your paper, it's good to go, but you don't credit that author. So it's going to flag as plagiarized material. But that actually leads me right into the next form of plagiarism, which is self-plagiarism. Not all students think about this, but you can absolutely plagiarize your own work. So for example, let's say you're in your undergrad degree taking a marketing class, you write that paper, great. Now you're in your graduate program taking marketing again, and oh, the information in that paper in my bachelor's would work in my master's. Guess what? You cannot use your material that you wrote earlier on in a future paper. Even if it's just a few papers down the line, you can't do that because it's still considered plagiarism. Now, I will say, if something in a previous paper really does just fit the paper you're currently writing, you can actually cite yourself, even if it's an unpublished paper. Do keep in mind you don't want to do this often because your professor can see that is lazy, but you can maybe do it once in a paper and then once way later on, but just keep that in mind that you can do it. But again, you cannot use material you wrote in another paper. That's the moral of this story. But that leads us to the last type of plagiarism, which is called total plagiarism, also known as global plagiarism. And now this one results in the harshest type of punishment because what you're doing here is you're taking someone else's work and passing it off fully as your own. So the situation that generally arises with this one is you pay for a paper. You pay for someone else to write your paper. Some situation leads to you lying deliberately about the authorship of the work you turned in. This is another one of those forms of plagiarism that generally happens when the student is feeling pressure. They're feeling desperate. They're trying to meet that timeline, that deadline, and they know they're not going to. But I will say this right now, it's better to not meet a timeline than to turn in a piece of work that's not yours. Ask your professor for the extension, and if they say no, take that no versus the punishment of globally plagiarizing. I don't know if that's a term, but we're gonna say it is. And there we have it, the 6 different types of plagiarism. Now I'm curious, what type of plagiarism are you most familiar with? Not because you plagiarize, none of us plagiarize, I'm sure. This video is merely pointless. I'm just curious, which type of plagiarism are you most familiar with in your life? But anyways, thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. And by the way, YouTube has this awesome new feature for subscribers to help support their creators if they want to, called YouTube Thanks. It's down where you would like this video, and what it is a nice way to give to your creators. Let them know the videos you like, the content you want to see more of, and just an overall, hey, I see you and I support you. But by the way, being here right now is the best support you can possibly give me. So thank you guys, have a great day, and I'm gonna get on to the second video. I'll see you in the next one.